Hey guys, okay, so in this week's video we're going to kind of continue the whole anti-development conversation. Now, just a quick refresher, before Christmas I did 2 separate videos on this topic. In the first video I threw a bucket load of statistics at you guys to highlight just how much of an outlier Brisbane is when it comes to our proportion of detached dwellings. Then we looked at how town planning legislation or policy has kind of influenced that outcome. Then we went down the rabbit hole of looking at what drives policy or town planning policy and legislation. And long story short, we got to the point where I basically said, I think people's fears of development is what leads to that whole situation. Then in the second video, we kind of hit pause, took a step back, and I looked at why you should care about this stuff. Because I know there's so many people out there, and I would naturally do this, but so many people out there that are just going to be like, why is different a bad thing? We don't want to be same. Why should we be copying everyone else? So yeah, we looked at just how it's leading to urban sprawl, leading to housing affordability issues, all of that sort of stuff. So if you haven't seen those 2 first videos, I'd strongly recommend you go back and watch them because they definitely do set the scene for what we're going to talk about today. So what am I going to talk about today? Well, today I want to kind of identify those fears again, add in a few more based on or in addition to what we talked about last time. And I kind of want to challenge those fears in a safe and kind way, because I genuinely believe that it's not the high density, so it's not the reduced lot size, it's not the unit types and all of that sort of stuff that is creating the problems which are resulting in these fears. I think it's bad design. So I think instead of focusing our energy on constantly fighting densities, we should be supporting densities and instead putting that energy into creating better design outcomes, because then it allows us to tap into some of the silver linings or unintended and intended benefits that you can get from development, and it helps us address those issues I identified in the second video. So where do we start? Let's start with fear or issue number 1. Let's start with privacy. So as I suggested in the first video, people naturally think, okay, when you have higher densities, you can have more people overlooking, which is going to give you that icky sort of feeling, like you don't like people watching you and being up in your business. Now, example, I want to give you a bit of story I want to tell you here. So back when I was 24, when I was a wee little town planner, I bought a house in Alderley. Now, it looked like a house, but technically it wasn't a house. So basically it was a situation where it was a 1920s or 30s Queenslander. It was right on the cusp there. 1920s or 30s Queenslander. There was 2 houses side by side, driveway through the middle, and then there were some units at the rear. So technically it was part of the body corporate and therefore it was a unit, but it looked to the outside world like a cute little Queenslander house. Anyway, I loved that place because we had the units at the back, I had the units to the side, there was units all around, which meant naturally when I pulled up late at night, I felt very, very safe, because I knew that if something was to happen to me in the street in that moment, everyone could instantly, well not everyone, but a lot of people could quickly take a side step, or they could open the curtain and peer out, and they would be watching down on me. I would have people to be able to help me in an instant. And more importantly, and I touched on this in a video that I did, I think it was back in November or something like that, where I talked about the HIA housing, where I go out and look at things, judging, mental blank for an absolute second there. I need coffee this morning. But basically I talked about my judging experience, and I talked about how CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design, more specifically the perception of overlooking, can help to deter crime and improve safety and all of that sort of stuff. So if we go back to that situation at Alderley, I felt very safe because there was lots of people around me. So yeah, having extra people looking down on the street and overlooking can actually result in a lot of benefits. Now, so then the question is, okay, if we actually embrace density and allow for those benefits, how do we counter the negatives, that icky sort of feeling? Well, quite simply, we can do that through design. I say quite simply, it's not as simple as it sounds, but we could basically look at stepping windows, privacy screening, screening out outdoor landscape areas, focus on providing that obstructions to the views in the areas where it really matters, but then opening up the views to the street and areas where we actually want to encourage view lines to be improved. Now, I know there's a lot of people who are going to sit here and go, Peter, we've already got the privacy screening rules when it comes to small lots, all of that sort of stuff. Yes, we do have some stuff there, but clearly it's not working as well as it can. So I think there's an opportunity there, and I'm not suggesting I have the answers for 1 second here, but there's an opportunity to stop and go, how can we do this differently to get better privacy outcomes so we reduce that icky feeling whilst achieving or tapping into the CPTED principles or benefits that we can get. Now, next thing, which is kind of similar in a way, is acoustics. So as I mentioned in the first video, again, there is this perception out there that the more people you have in the area, the more noisy it is, the less amenity you have, all of that sort of stuff. Now, I think, and I'll use my Red Hill property as an example at the moment. So it's a cute little pre-1947 house. I think I dated it to 1913, and it's around, yes. So just, there's a lot of people out there going to be like, whoo, just that side of 1911, hey? Yeah, very, very lucky. But it's surrounded by some super cute pre-1911 houses, but everyone's on teeny tiny blocks. So again, very similar situation to what I had back at Alderley. Now, I love the fact that on a Friday or Saturday night, every now and then, the uni students next door, or what I perceive to be uni students diagonally to the rear, can sometimes have a bit of a party. Like, they get the music going. Obviously, if they were doing it every single night and it was hardcore rock music, I'd be like, or some sort of techno music or something like that, I'd be like, okay, not loving this. But yeah, it's less frequent, probably once a month, once every 2 weeks sort of thing. The music, I don't mind it, but I love the fact that they have those parties, because it makes me feel like I'm not living in a retirement village. I've actually got some life left in me. Makes me feel so old saying this, but yeah, I love having the energy around. It's something I actually really love when I travel through Asian countries and stuff like that. Having the sense of people and community and life around you gives you a lot of energy. So yeah, again, what I want to challenge people to say is, I don't think having increased densities in an area is a bad thing. It can actually be a very good thing. It can make you feel alive, but it's a case of managing through design the key areas. So making sure your bedrooms or your areas where you're trying to sleep, all that sort of stuff, they have increased acoustic benefits, and you're not getting the impacts in those areas, but then you can actually enjoy the life around you when you're outside and all of that sort of stuff. Another example I wanted to give you, and it's not the best example, but I'll still use it. So in my street, I know what everyone's doors and gates sound like. It makes me sound a little bit creepy, but it's very obvious everyone has these different sounds. Anyway, going back to the end of last year, I was working from home that day and sitting in the front room. So I'm working away, and all of a sudden I hear Claire next door, her gate closed. I'm like, oh, there goes Claire off to work. Cool, happy days. About 10 minutes later, I hear this noise next door, and I'm like, yeah, she's gone to work. No one's home. What is that noise? So I get up, go have a bit of a look. Sure enough, I see her dog trying to escape. And I'm like, all right, nah, we're getting on this one. Go around, grab the dog, lock it under the house, wait until she gets home, etc., etc. So it's another example where hearing your neighbours and having that audible, what's the word I'm looking about? Basically being able to monitor things isn't a bad outcome. So again, can we tap into those benefits whilst also protecting our amenity in the key areas? Something to consider. Next example is parking. So obviously people know that the more density you get, the more cars that are required, and it impacts on street parking, all of that sort of stuff. What if we were to try and refresh or revise the way we address parking? So increase the number of car parks on site, and I know all the developers out there right now are just like, Peter, do you not have any memory? Like what happened in 2018, 2019 when council increased the parking rates? Unit developments, when it comes to townhouses and the smaller end of the spectrum, just dropped off the cliff. Like there was nothing happening for a good 4 or 5 years there. Yeah, I remember that portion of my work just dried up overnight because no one could get the feasibilities to stack up once they accounted for the extra parking bays and manoeuvring and all of that sort of stuff. So I know it's not as simple as just increase the parking rates. That would be disastrous. But I'm thinking in situations here, we're tapping into what I called the missing middle in, I think it was the first video or the second video. Anyway, one of the previous videos in this topic, I talked about the fact that we've got the missing middle. So we're tapping into a product or a land size that's currently not developable. So it's not like we're compromising or reducing the benefits to an existing market. We're creating a new market with some extra requirements there. Or can we tap into like turning tables and things like that? They're a lot more economical these days than they've ever been. Car stackers, again, yes, there is a cost involved there, but can we start to push the boundaries, question things a bit more, look at different ways? Or more importantly, can we actually start focusing more on public transport? Trying to create a system like in the video last year I talked about Singapore. They want to have a metro station within 10 minutes of every house or something there, or every dwelling. Can we look at trying to go that? And again, I'm not going to sit here and go, it's so easy, we can do this overnight. It's clearly not easy, but I want to encourage everyone to just start to question things, to start to get that ball rolling. Next sphere I want to tap into is vegetation. Now, with this one, at the moment, I think there is a very big focus on trying to create these little micro garden type things. And I want to throw 2 sort of reasons at you as to why that may not necessarily always be a good thing. And I'm not looking at it from an amenity perspective or any of that sort of stuff. I do think that having greenery in backyards is great from an amenity perspective. I'm just looking at it from an environmental perspective. So 2 things. If you go and create these little garden areas everywhere, you're encouraging the fauna to come into these locations. These locations that are inhabited by cats, dogs, they have cars moving around. Basically, things that are threats to their existence are moving around these garden beds. So basically, they have a reduced chance of survival and all of that sort of stuff if we start trying to create these little gardens. Whereas if we consolidate the vegetation into one specific area within each locality, you start to get these safe havens for the fauna. So that's a positive to look at. Also, from a biodiversity perspective, and I can't believe I'm going to use this analogy because it sounds so dodgy, but I'm going to do it anyway. You think a farmer wants a wife. Now, I have never seen Farmer Wants a Wife, but I've obviously seen the ads, I've heard about it, all that sort of stuff. General principle is when you're working out on a farm, you're isolated, you don't have a lot of people to mix with, you've got issues when it comes to relationships, all of that sort of stuff. So you've got to go on a TV show to find a partner. Whereas if you come to Brisbane and you're, say, a uni student at QT or UQ, you can go out on a Friday night to the valley or the city or wherever people go these days, again showing my age, but you can go out wherever you want to go and you're going to have a much higher pool of people to be able to mix with and to breed with. So the genetic benefits of that mixing are greater than, or if you're a uni student here, you have a greater benefit of getting the genetic benefits, greater chance is what I'm trying to say of getting the genetic benefits compared with farmers and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, same principle when it comes to these little garden beds. If you create little isolated sections of vegetation, you're reducing the mixing pool and therefore the biodiversity being biodiversity, diversity of bio. Seems pretty obvious when you say it that way, right? So yeah, there's benefits to be had there by trying to consolidate vegetation and get bigger areas. And then what's another one I can talk about? So we've done the acoustics, the privacy, the cars, the vegetation. Crime is another one we hear a lot about all the time. People go, oh, the higher the densities, the more crime you're going to get. Again, I'd suggest that's through poor design that we have those issues. So creating dark alleyways and all of that sort of stuff. As I suggested through the the overlooking and the acoustic stuff, you can actually get some amazing CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design, benefits from having more people in an area. So it can actually work the other way. And then it comes to things like property values. That's another one we get all the time. I'd suggest that when you actually start renovating or improving an area and you address these concerns properly, it can improve property values. If nothing else, stabilise them. So it's not like it's going to fall off a cliff and all that sort of stuff. So, okay, we've looked at all the silver linings that can come about, and I'm not going to suggest these are out there at the moment and people are just missing them and it's so obvious. I think they're opportunities for us to tap into. So there's those that you can get, but then there's also other opportunities out there. So when it comes to development, I've got a job at the moment. I think we're at 56 lots at the moment, and I think I estimated that we're going to be up to, when I say we're, it's the client who's actually going to be up for $1.65 million in infrastructure charges. Now that infrastructure, or those infrastructure charges, they go towards the maintenance and upgrade of existing infrastructure within the city or provision of new infrastructure. So we're talking about bus lines, ferry terminals, sewage lines, water lines, not train lines, but all of that sort of stuff basically. So in this situation, that development is going to directly contribute 1.65 million or whatever it ends up being dollars back into the community to be able to repair, maintain and improve that infrastructure. That's a win for the community. We also, in that situation, one of the submitters raised the concerns about the fact that there's this really dilapidated footpath out the front. We are going to get a condition, and this is standard for development applications like this, we are going to get a condition that requires us to rip up that existing footpath, relay it with a modern, wider footpath. So everyone in the community is going to get this nice, smooth path that doesn't have the cracks and all of that sort of stuff, and it's actually a wider pathway where people can pass each other better. That's another benefit. When it comes to vegetation, this site is absolutely covered in weeds. I still remember the very first time I turned up on site and I was like, oh, pretty yellow flowers, it looks so nice. And the ecologist like, Peter, it's Singapore daisy, it's a weed, it's disgusting, it stifles the native vegetation, it kills it, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, I'll just go back into my lane now. So yeah, with her help, I was able to look at that site and just be like, damn, it is a weed infestation. So again, one of the conditions we're going to get as part of that application or any approval there is we're going to have to go in and clear out all of the weeds on that site. And we're going to replant it, or replace it, I should say, with what's considered to be endangered species of vegetation. So we're going to plant some stuff back in there that's not naturally thriving out there and encourage those new communities. So it's going to be a win from an ecosystem and biodiversity perspective. Then when it comes to the drainage channel at the back, over time it is just built up with so much silt and so much rubbish and all of that sort of stuff, and the weeds are all in there. And as a result, the water's not flowing through there properly, it's ponding, we've got mosquito issues, all of that sort of stuff. The client's going to have to get in there, clear all that out, basically get the water flowing again, which is a massive win for the surrounding properties that have the issues that are associated with the flooding and the mosquitoes and all of that sort of stuff. Now, I'm not for 1 second going to sit here and pretend that that development is like the golden child. Oh my God, it's going to change everyone's world. It's an amazing example, etc., etc. The point I'm trying to make here is there's a lot of little direct benefits that the community gets as a result of that development, which in addition or add to the silver linings I was talking about with the other stuff. So we then get to the point of going, okay, with there's all of these benefits, where do we go from here? How do we start to encourage people to talk about this stuff a bit more? Now, let me just check what time we're up to with the video. 15 minutes, damn it, I ran over time. So, bit of an issue. Last week on Instagram, unfortunately, I realized through an upload error that they're now limiting their videos to 15 minutes. So I was like, I've got to make sure my videos are short and sharp. Now we got to stick to under 15 minutes. So my plan was to basically sit here and say, okay, we'll create a part 4 to this video series. I'll come back next week and I will talk about the ways that people are starting to roll the ball on this whole conversation. And that way it'll help me keep it under 15 minutes. And I've just realized I've already gone over 15 minutes, so I failed there. So what I'll now do is I'll just keep rolling on. I'll talk about it and I'll break this video into 2 and I'll test, hopefully this works, test the carousel feature. So it was the backup plan we were looking at last week, where you basically have one video and then you can slide left and see the second one. Let me get that out. So we'll give that a shot. Let me just check my time. Yes, I'm good. I've got a little bit more time before my next meeting, so we can push on. So let's talk about how people are actually addressing this at the moment and what's happening out there in the industry. So back in, I think it was June last year, might have been a little bit later, the state government actually approached me to see if I'd like to partner with them to do some videos on this whole topic. So this whole anti-development topic. Now, I'm not sharing any trade secrets here. They've given me permission to talk about it. I decided not to partner with them for various reasons, but I do genuinely believe in what they're trying to push or promote here, which is obviously what's led to kind of this video series and me talking about it here today. Now, they want to approach it from a slightly different angle. They want to approach it from the, why are we promoting the white picket fence ideology? Like, why are we trying to say that this is what everyone should be aspiring to, when clearly that doesn't match our demographic these days? Like, yes, there is definitely a portion of the population out there that wants the white picket fence, the big backyard, all of that sort of stuff, and good on them, go for it, love them. They can continue to chase that dream. But there is a lot of other people out there that aren't, when they actually sit down and boil down to it, aren't necessarily chasing or wanting that dream. Like me, for example, my generation and younger generations, a lot of us don't like the idea of maintaining a big backyard. Like, I can think of nothing worse, much to my mum's despair, because she is a gardener through and through. I can think of nothing worse than spending my weekend sitting there pulling out weeds and all of that sort of stuff. Like, ain't nobody got time for that. So I would much prefer a smaller property, hence why I've gone for my property at Red Hill, a smaller block size where I don't have that maintenance burden. So again, if you don't chase that white picket fence dream, you have a better chance of not having that burden. Next thing, we've got an aging population, the baby boomers. They're getting to retirement age these days. Let's be honest, and I'm starting to see this after I did my ACL a couple of years ago, realizing I'm not as young as I used to be, not as nimble as I used to be. So yeah, as you start to age, it becomes harder for you to be able to get around, maintain a big property, all of that sort of stuff. So people are starting to look to downsize. Now, obviously, white picket fence does not work in with downsizing. And then the final thing I just wanted to mention here is we are a very multicultural society. So I have some clients that are developers, and when they go to do land subdivisions in areas which have a higher proportion of people with an Indian background, Chinese background, whatever, they're naturally going, people don't want rainforests in their backyards, generally speaking, or big garden areas. They want easy to maintain properties and all of this sort of stuff. So culturally, we've all got different backgrounds, different desires, all of that sort of stuff. And if you try and bring them in here to Australia, that doesn't match with the white picket fence dream. So yeah, the state government's going to tackle it from the position of saying, let's stop just automatically getting on the path of white picket fence, white picket fence, white picket fence. And let's start to question and go, hold on a sec, is there different products for different people? Do we need to start to try and create and encourage and foster a variety of housing styles and all that sort of stuff? So yeah, they're doing a lot of stuff in this space. I saw, I think it was just before Christmas, some of their videos hit mainstream media. So on the free-to-air TV, I think I've seen them on Instagram or Facebook as well. So they're starting to get the ball rolling in this space. And then in addition, I think it was Christmas party last year, I was having a chat to a guy and he was like, oh, I just went to like this Tony Robbins event or whatever it was. And he goes, I was sitting next to this chick and the minute I said I was a developer, she was like, rage filled, oh my goodness, you developers are the worst things in the world, do you understand what you're doing to the world, etc., etc. Went on this massive rant. Anyway, long story short, turns out she lives in a townhouse or a unit. So he was sitting here going, WTF, like pot calling the kettle black. How the heck can she sit here and be so anti-development when development has given her the house that she lives in or the dwelling that she lives in today? And I was like, oh dude, you're bringing back council memories. Like, I remember back when I used to work in council, we'd get submissions from people all the time that would be just absolutely ripping the adjoining development that was proposed, like the subdivision. And when you looked at their address, it was like unit blah blah or of blah blah, and you're like, oh guys, how can you be anti that when that's what you live in? Okay, whatever. So yeah, anyway, long story short, he was like, I want to start spreading some information and knowledge and awareness out there. I'm going to start creating a video, take a leaf out of your book type thing, and just see if I can start to spread some understanding out there. And I was like, great, go for it, dude. And then the final thing is, when I was starting to look for some of the statistics last year for that first video that I did in this series, I discovered what is called YIMBYism. So we all know NIMBYs, not in my backyards. There is actually a term and a movement out there called YIMBY, Y-I-M-B-Y. And I think I actually saw something about this on ABC or something like that earlier this week, and I was like, wow, talk about timing. So yeah, if you go to, I think I stumbled across the website was yimby.com.au or something like that. Just Google YIMBY, you'll find it. There's a lot of people out there that are just like, hold on a sec guys, we need to flip this conversation. We need to start promoting development. So where we get to is, obviously it's not an easy task. Obviously it's not going to happen overnight. Obviously the answers are not there in front of us and we can't just be like, yep, easy, let's make this happen. But what I want people to do is just go, okay, hold on a sec. The old way of doing things, not necessarily working here. There is some benefits, a lot of benefits as we've seen, that can be gained from development. So instead of putting all our energy into fighting development, what if we start to refocus and put that energy into improving the design outcomes so that we can address those fears, which are valid fears people have. How do we address those fears so that we can get a better outcome in the future and avoid the urban issues, the urban sprawl issues, all of that sort of stuff that we're experiencing now? Yeah, just going to put it out there, see how it lands. Would love it if anyone had any thoughts, conversations. Obviously, try to keep it nice. Don't get too negative and bitchy and all of that sort of stuff. But if anyone has any constructive ideas or thoughts, or even if you just want to highlight additional fears or additional problems so people can start to think about, okay, what's the silver lining there? How do we start to flip the conversation there? Yeah, add them below. Would love to keep the communication or the conversation going. Okay, I think that covers off everything I want to talk about today. As I always like to say, until next time, thanks for watching.
For all you red tape lovers out there, I have one thing to say. Well, no, actually, I've got three. Number one, the advice provided in these videos is general in nature. It's not site-specific. You would be a silly Billy to go and make financial decisions based on this advice without first checking with the town planner. Don't be a silly Billy. Number two, Brisbane town planning is in no way linked to Brisbane City Council. The views expressed in these videos are my own, not council's. So if you don't like them, blame me, not council. Number three, what was my number three? Oh yeah, the views expressed in these videos are accurate at the time of recording. If you're watching this video back 10 years from now, the views may not be so accurate. That's all.